What's up, gamers? We're back with another episode of TalkGG. It's episode 2, and today we're going to discuss explaining esports to non-esports people or non-gamers, and later on we'll also discuss live streaming culture and what it does to us, how does it affect our behavior and such. And once again, I'm Defur, and today I also, of course, have with me the Dave. Hello, Dave.
What's up?
How has another week in quarantine been for you? I guess it's like increasingly getting crazy. I think we're in double digits for weeks soon, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I just accept that this is my life now. I was listening to a podcast recently that said, like, if you try to think too hard about like way in the future and like, you know, what are you gonna do when everything opens up and we got the vaccine and everything, like you might feel like super bad.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, yeah, whatever, man. This is my life now.
I just have to note, because I get OCD by this, but I love how it says welcome to the show in our slide here now. It's just like the professionality. We're getting there, guys. Like we're trying our best. I actually, once again, I worked on the overlays 10 minutes before we went live, because that's just a busy life here in quarantine, you know. Don't really have anything to do, and then you get to it.
You know what though? To be fair, like I feel like, you know, I streamed myself building my computer on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Right. And since Wednesday night, I haven't actually had like enough free time to like work on it again.
Yeah. I mean,
it's already, for me, it's Sunday morning, so
I guess
dude.
Yeah, I guess we just kind of adapt to the reality that we are in right now. And yeah,
exactly.
Saying in chat, I expect this to go on until I die. I hope that we get to that many episodes, you know. I feel great that we got off to like episode 2, and it's you know, the second week. We've done this like 2 times in a row now, at least soon.
You have to celebrate your small victories.
Exactly. So I guess without further ado, because we did not have the things a bit structured the last time, and I think we went on for maybe 2 hours. We're going to see if we can aim this to be around an hour. Maybe we'll be a bit more than that, because we just love talking so goddamn much, you know.
Yeah, we'll try.
TalkGG, that's what it's about, right? So without further ado, we're just going to jump into the first topic here. So yeah, I actually have an intro here, which basically neatly written out for you guys. So for this topic, explaining esports to non-gamers, I think everyone that's been into esports has had this kind of experience. So one of the things that we wanted to bring up here is that esports is a new thing, and it can sometimes be hard for people to grasp what it actually is. As people, me and Dave here are very much dedicated to this interest. How do we go about explaining that to people who aren't into esports, or maybe don't have much of any experience at all with esports or gaming even? And for me, like I feel this is one of those topics that if someone else had brought it up, I think I would feel like it's beating a dead horse kind of topic, because it's like, god damn it, I feel like I've had to explain this for so many times. And you know, it's understandably it is, you know, people don't really understand what it is. I think the surprise for me, and I mentioned this to you earlier, Dave, was just sometimes I can get caught off guard of who doesn't actually understand esports, because I think we had different definitions of, like, you know, I think when we had this topic in our document, the first, it just said explaining esports to normies specifically, but it's like even those 2 words, like normies or like non-gamers or whatever you want to call people, it's like I think us two have like different images of what that is, and I think when you brought it up the first time, you were thinking about your like family members, right?
No, actually, I was thinking about a time where I actually did bring my friends to the Overwatch League at the Blizzard Arena, and they're straight up like non-gamers, like very in the mainstream. Yeah, we kind of had a short discussion about like boomers and zoomers, right? Where it's like, hey, the expectation is that people our age and younger are gonna know what we're talking about, and you're like, actually, I had some moments, right? So you can get really surprised by who does and does not know about some of the things we're talking about.
But how did that go? Like when you got there, I guess you tried to explain it. I mean, and as we covered in our previous episode when we did discuss the Overwatch League, Overwatch can sometimes be an amazing clusterfuck, and it's even hard to, you know, watch it as a spectator if you know what's happening in games, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's like sometimes I can get lost in it. So like how did you go about to explain that to these people that you brought along?
Yeah, let's just get straight into it. These people were my previous coworkers, and I'm gonna be honest. Like, I feel kind of bad for them because I don't know if they truly grasped what actually happened that day. Because, well, to give you the context, like to get the tickets, you have to buy them ahead of time online, and then you show them on your phone. And so I got there with another friend who actually knows Overwatch and plays Overwatch.
Yeah.
He's not super interested in the league, but I was like, hey, I might as well bring you along. And I got two other friends who actually don't know what Overwatch is. I'm just, you know, this is kind of like an experiment. I want to show them a part of my life, that type of thing. They're close friends of mine, so that's why that's why I wanted to do it. They ended up coming later, so they weren't part of like the lineup process and everything with us. So we get into the arena, and I just told them, hey, we have seats in this section. When you get here, just come over and look for us. I'm wearing a purple hat or whatever, right? And so they get there, and I'm like, okay, now I gotta explain to you like the game and how the actual competitive scene works, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like already from like last episode, and if you've played Overwatch and you understand, or you've seen something about Overwatch, you kind of already understand that like there's a lot of pieces to this game where like I don't think you can just sit in some bleachers of some stadium and be like, hey, so the game works this way. There's 6 people on each team, and it's an arena-based shooter, and there's different classes of like blah blah blah. You know, it's like I'm like, oh my gosh, I just realized what fresh hell I brought myself into. Because one of my coworkers, like she's never, like I feel like she's never played like a video game in her life. And so I'm like, okay, so the girl with the mech, right? Her role, and she's like, what's a mech? And I was like, oh shoot.
You're like Evangelion. She's like, what is that? You're like, oh fuck, you know, anime.
Like, it's the Korean girl. And she's like, I can't tell what any of them like their ethnic backgrounds at all. And I was like, oh geez.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me though, because it's been a while since I actually have been to, you know, live events in Sweden. It's for esports, mainly the games that they cover for live events. It's well, back in the day it was StarCraft 2, right? But it was usually, and then, you know, when StarCraft 2 started to dip a bit, it became like StarCraft and Counter-Strike. They even had some events of DreamHack where it was both of the games. And then later on, it's mostly exclusively been Counter-Strike. But so I went to these StarCraft events a lot of times, and sometimes I would bring them to these events. And I remember that actually the benefit of like to bringing someone who, like, if you bring someone who isn't interested, or like, I mean, they must have some kind of interest if they're going to a live event, but if they don't know anything or have any history of knowing anything about esports, I think live events is actually one of the easier kind of contexts that you can do it, because it's like people know sports, right? And
exactly.
And even if you don't know yourself like how to explain it, especially, I mean, this goes more for StarCraft, because that's the one I know more of, but the casters are so good at breaking stuff down. And in the case of, you know, we usually had the, you know, the Dream Team, Artosis and Tasteless, and they're like, you know, and you know this too, like the beginning chats when the game is like kind of low, they just chat about Pokemon, they talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, like they talk about whatever shit they want to talk. They talk about fast food, they don't really care. They just try to make it fun for people to kind of listen, and it, like, they are that charismatic that you kind of start to listen to them, and then they're like, oh, by the way, and this is how the game works, by the way, guys, and they're like, oh, okay,
this is a supply depot. Yeah, they're actually really good at that, and StarCraft 2 lends itself really well to that type of commentary.
Yeah, and especially because it has those like the long kind of build up, so you have the time. Like, I remember one guy that I brought along who, he is a gamer, but he had never played an RTS, and for me it was really easy to just, like, you know, for some people that I brought along, I could go down to the, you know, more details. Okay, so now he's in a bad position, right? Look at that number up there. That's a bad number. You want that to go higher, but he has a higher number than the other guy. And then you see how they start to, like, look at the screen and, like, okay, they're starting to figure it out. But at some point, like, with some people, it's just like, alien bad, robot good. They, you know, and we root for the robot guy because he's Swedish. He's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah! Like, just, and sometimes you have to keep it simple. And I feel almost that, I feel that, because I've been more into fighting games for the past maybe 2 or 3 years.
Oh, right,
besides ARMS, you know, looking at the other fighting games like Tekken, you know, that's pretty much, I would say, one of the easiest esports to understand. So I feel like almost never there's, like, Smash can actually be confusing for people because, you know, the concept of, like, percentages and knocking people out of a stage and stuff like that, it kind of, like, you know, it's not as intuitive for someone who is used to sports. But just, like, you have, you know, you have 100%, and when it goes to 0%, you lose. It's a very, like, okay, I get it. And then, you know, maybe they don't understand the combos, but if they see 100 people around them screaming, they're just gonna feel the hype. Like, it doesn't matter if they understand it. If they feel the hype, they're just gonna, like, because I was with people that did say that sometimes, like, after these events, I would ask them, like, you know, how do you feel about this? And they would just be like, I didn't understand anything, but it was so exciting. Like, and I don't know, maybe was that how they felt when you walked out of there, or were they just confused?
I mean, I think they were being a little nice, but I think it was like the same exact result. Because my other friend, he told me, he's like, wow, this is exactly like traditional sports. They do the games, they do the quick break. There's people selling concessions. He's like, they have everything, and he's like, this is amazing. Like, I didn't realize how, like, thorough this could be, you know, because like he's seen like basketball games or like a baseball game or something like that, right? And yeah, like, so I feel like it was kind of like, oh, mission accomplished. At least you can kind of understand, like, a little bit of why I like this stuff, right? And at the end of the night, because, you know, they used to play like 4 matches a day on the weekends or something like that. And so at the very least, as the teams went up against each other, they could understand it more and more. And I have to give it to the Overwatch League team. At the very least, like, they tried their best to make the quality of life of a spectator better, because they color the teams based on what color they are. They have the white color for the away team, and then the solid color for the home team and stuff like that. So at the very least, people could be like, okay, like, if I want to root for the dark blue team, like, they're the good guys, and then the ones in the white are the bad guys, or whatever, right? So that's how I'm gonna go. And they go by the crowd's energy, and yeah, they could tell that people were excited, because people legitimately are excited at these events. So, but they got that, you know.
Yeah, I think you. I mean, and this is the in my opinion, is just like the easiest context, as I said, to kind of explain esports as well. I think it becomes a different challenge when you are in another context, because I remember mentioning this to you, because one of the things that catches me off guard when like, I expect older people not to understand esports, but for me, like, the easiest analogy to just explain the basics as almost it's, you know, because I've had some years where I had to try to explain game development, so you have to kind of find, like, either the one news story that they know about. When it came to game development, the easiest thing to explain, especially in Sweden, was, you know, the guy who made Minecraft, because he came into old media, like, he came into the magazines and everything, and people are like, oh, he lives like 30 minutes away from here. Yeah,
that was Notch, right?
Yeah, notched, right. And he he lived in close to Stockholm, you know, and it was a concept that you, because the magazine started to explain it, and then it became kind of clear for them. Oh, okay, this is how it works. He can actually work with this because the magazine said so. Which okay, that actually kind of makes me angry at some points, but
right.
Yeah, but because it's like that's the what's makes it legitimate. If like a tabloid says it, it's like, oh, okay, then I get it. But me, the freaking grandson, who's just like, I'm a human, like I'm right here. So I've had that experience of like trying to explain to older people, like you know, trying to find that. And for esports, it's the easiest way have just been to kind of say that it is like sports. Like it's just that you're an avatar, but imagine like, you know, in football, like you're a guy in a team, right? And then in esports, you're also a guy in a team, but you look differently. And you know, it's the roles are similar. Like back in the day when I played a lot of Team Fortress 2, I think it was the easiest way to explain was making the analogy for TF2 and soccer or football was the easiest one, because it's like you know, in soccer you have the two forwards that are like the attacking, and it's just like, yeah, well, you have the DPS scouts. It's kind of like they're supposed to pick and, you know, finish the job kind of thing. And then you have the goalie, which is the medic. You know, you want to keep that person safe, because if that person is not in the game, then you're just gonna lose the point, right? And that's the, you know, and it's kind of like when you start to meet them halfway, it made sense. But the kicker here comes that when I meet people who are young and don't understand esports, that's actually more confusing to me, because I get so caught off guard, because I just assume that we should have some similar frame of reference when it comes to, you know, like modern media and like trends and what is happening in the world. Like, I don't know. I don't keep track of, you know, music, you know, anything like pop culture, but I kind of know, you know, fucking, I don't know, Cardi B or whatever. Like, I know people's, I see them in social media, right? So I can understand what it is. But it seems that esports in a lot of ways can sometimes be like this isolated bubble. And the specific one that I had was when, so my friend, sorry if I'm like, you know, calling her out on this, but, you know, she's like 2 or 3 years younger than me. And I think this was when I was like 22. So she was like 20, 19. And I had explained to her that, like, oh, well, you know, I went to Japan and did this, and like, oh, so you made games? Yeah, okay. And I also, you know, I went to these tournaments and stuff. She's like, oh, what do you mean? Like, do you play any sports? I'm like, no, it's like video game tournaments. And I remember how she was just like, to her boyfriend who was in the kitchen, is like, honey, wait, you have to listen to this. Come here. And he's like, tell him what you just said. And I'm like, yeah, just video game tournaments. Do you hear? Like, is that a thing? You can actually do that? And I felt so like, the guy, her boyfriend, was like a programmer, and he knew esports, and he was like, how the fuck, what is happening here? And I'm like, she's like, look at this nerd. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm your friend, dude.
Circus animal.
And it was so like mind-blowing to me, because she's like, she works or worked at Spotify, and I was like, for me, Spotify represents the like epicenter of like trends in music, and like they had their own gaming division within the company. And I was like, I was so taken aback that I couldn't, like, I didn't know where to start how to explain esports to her, because it was like, I think for older people, if you draw the line of like sports, it's easy to kind of relate. But I think for some young people that I guess still sees esports as a nerdy thing, they can still have an even more so a harder view on that. Like, it's not real. Like, bro, it's just a game. Like, how can you, you know?
Right.
And I think that's even harder to break through. Like, what is actually, like, why is it interesting? And I think that's even harder to explain. Like, because the easy stuff is easy. It's like the basic stuff is easy to explain, right? Like mechanics and stuff like that. But I think the harder part comes in when you start to explain what makes it interesting? Why am I engaged in esports? Why am I not engaged in sports? Because then I have to question myself, like, why do I like this, like, fucking tight skin suit, you know, purple Widowmaker flying around shooting people in the head?
God,
why
yeah.
is that interesting to me?
It's still, I mean, it still is nerdy, right? Like,
yeah.
esports kind of has this element of, I mean, there's like multiple layers to it. Like, number one, you have to be good at the game. Number two, you have to be good at the interface of the game, which is like PC computers, right? And like the whole culture behind it too is still very much like niche and yeah, I make the mistake too, like because I follow a lot of the Overwatch League players. They're, you know, they're between teenage years to early 20s, and they almost have a completely different, like, I don't know, cultural background, and like the use of their vernacular is sometimes like incredibly like I cannot interpret it because I'm like, I don't know, like you're making up memes on the fly right now. Like I have no idea what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like surprised, right? But at the same time, like, yeah, that's kind of a not like not prejudice, but like what is the word for it? But it's like you know you kind of assume that people of that generation all know what you're talking about. But you're right, yeah, like I guess in a way, someone like pop music, like Cardi B or something like that, someone like that,
yeah.
Is still so much more popular, right?
Yeah.
Like esports in a way still has a really steep hill to climb. And but one thing I'm thinking about is the fact that, you know, since we're all staying at home and you literally can't play real sports right now until we, you know, attempt to reopen, right? There have been, like, ESPN has been airing stuff like iRacing, right? Which I think is incredible. Because if anything, yeah, it's like NASCAR or Formula One. I'm not sure which one is which, because Formula One's doing it, but also like NASCAR's doing it. They're literally shipping like whole like racing kits to professional drivers' houses.
Yeah.
So they have the wheel, the chair, and all that stuff, and they set up like their Xbox or like a computer.
All right.
And they're like actually racing from their homes. And people are enjoying it. They're legitimately enjoying it. And I remember I saw a clip of one guy who just like he like rage quit in the middle of a race because someone hit him. He's like, "Oh, screw it, it's just a game," you know.
Yeah.
And he got like suspended because his sponsors were like, "You didn't take it seriously," you know.
Yeah.
And it's getting mad real because like one guy, you know, said the N-word on a live like race, like, or a stream. He was like, "Can you guys hear me?" And then he like says it, and it's like, oh no, his sponsors dropped him. It's like, hey, this is a real thing. Like people are starting to realize, like, okay, they're like, oh, it's just a game, right, bro? It's like, no, this is your job, buddy. Like,
yeah,
you know,
it almost becomes like a really strange situation right now with the pandemic, because it almost, from the nerd's perspective, it's almost like, you know, quote unquote real sports are like coming crawling to like esports, like, now you want our help, right? Like the Chad sports dude comes in and you're like, oh, now you want my help, dude. But it's funny, like you know, working in esports as well, like we've there has been, I've told you a bit about this, but like there has been some interesting offers of like how we can work with sports broadcast and like maybe implement some esports into the sports broadcast and stuff like that. And I'm not gonna say like any, you know, organizations or anything, but it's no, but it was like some, you know, team or crew or whatever, they were like, oh, let's freaking, you know, the Mario and Sonic at Olympics, you know, let's just air that and have the athletes like fucking play it. And it's like like it's interesting because it becomes this like, they're so eager suddenly that they don't give a shit about what it is. They just want in right now. But at the same time, this can actually be the stepping stone to, you know, reaching those people that I talked about, that like that are very like hardline, you know, esports is not real. And then suddenly, you know, ESPN or whatever comes in and just like fucking shoves it down their throat. And it's like, now you have to, like, you're stuck in house for 6 more months. Fucking look at his Fortnite shit. And it's just like, And like they just have to watch it, and eventually they'll maybe realize like, holy shit, this is actually hype, or you know, maybe Fortnite was a bad example for that personally, but
no, because I actually a lot of this I get, like the iRacing stuff is from I think you know who he is, Slasher, Rod Breslow, because he's like that. I don't know what he is now, like quote unquote esports journalist,
consultant, I guess.
Consultant, yeah. I really love the fact that in the last couple of years he's been appearing on mainstream media networks to kind of explain esports and the gaming industry to basically Fox News and or like, you know, audience members that would be in like the boomer generation, like people who we think will never be able to understand us or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so he was recounting, like, you know, when the pandemic was kind of, at least for the United States, when our shutdown was early, you know, he was basically saying that, like, in meme format, that like esports are real sports now because, you know, NBA's closed, like NFL's closed, everything is like no people are allowed to like go play sports together. No stadiums are allowed to open. So you're gonna watch virtual racing, you're gonna watch virtual basketball, you're gonna watch Fortnite, you're gonna watch League of Legends. And what he retweeted one person, I believe, that who said, okay, so like this whole time I've always made fun of esports, but I finally watched like a cast of League of Legends, and the amount of detail the casters have to go into made me realize like how like wrong I was and how much respect I have for like this craft.
Yeah,
because it shows like it's like once you give it a chance, like most people are willing to be like, oh, there's a lot of parallels here. Like I can understand why people like it. Like when I first experienced esports live, like it was StarCraft 2. And that's when I realized this is the exact feeling that sports fans want to capture all the time. Yeah. Because we're in like a bar and we're probably watching someone like, I don't know, I want to say like Scarlet versus Marine King or some, you know, some
maybe,
like,
I don't know.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh, like it was like probably like Naniwa versus one of the top Koreans at the time. And there's this like feeling of like we really want to root for this one person for a certain reason, you know, and it's so primal, it's so, you know, like I don't want to say primitive, but it really it speaks to our instincts as people, right? Yeah. So
no, but I agree, and I feel like so because I also had that moment, especially with StarCraft 2. I think the first the first live event that I went to, an esports event in this kind of matter, was there was an invitational just when StarCraft 2 got released, the you know, the first what is it, expansion, and so they invited 8 players to Stockholm to fight for, like, I guess it was like around $10,000 or something, but in Swedish was like 100,000 crowns. Like, oh shit! And it was big money that back then. I think it was like I can't remember, like more like 10 years ago, more than that, probably like 13. But
because making a lot of money off of esports is a very recent thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so going there, you know, for me, because I went there not knowing really anything about StarCraft. Like and the first thing you know, for me as a Swede, it was like you walk into this thing and it's like a cinema theater, and then they have this like, you know, dude in a like suit coming up, like talking like he's a, you know, game host show, and it's like, wow, okay, this is actually, you know, the production value was pretty good. And they have people like commentators. I'm like, what the hell? Okay, this is actually pretty nice. And then like they introduce all the players, and it was like these 8 players have flown in from all across the world. 3 of the 8 players back then were, you know, in the beginning of StarCraft 2, there was like 3 really good Swedish players. So there was like Jinro, HeyPro, and Morrow, I think were the like 3 Swedish players. And it, you know, you see 3 Swedish guys, right? And they're like a couple of years older than you. And then it's like, oh, and there's like these Korean players and there's American players too. And I'm like, whoa, okay, they have no chance against those. They're just like the Swedish dudes, I guess. And it was like so close battles, and you really do get that, you know, as you say, like primal kind of feeling of like, oh shit, I really want the Swede to win. Even though for me, I'm I can talk shit for days about Sweden, right? I don't give a shit. Like I can say so much bad things about Sweden just for the fun of it. I don't really feel any pride for that. But when I see a Swede, like when I see the freaking like overlay
The
and you
Swedish
see,
flag.
yeah, you have the Swedish flag and there's like, oh, there's what, like you watch the Korean tournament, there's fucking hundreds of Koreans and there's like 2 Swedes, and then Jinro went to the like semifinals twice, and I was like losing my shit looking at that. And then after that I'm like hooked. Like how can I not enjoy that after that?
Because it's the story behind it, right?
Yeah.
Like I that's why I think Overwatch World Cup is actually a better example of how to like kind of ease someone into it. Like obviously the national flags clearly mean much more to people. I mean, that's why like in last week's episode, like we kind of mentioned the regionality of the teams, right? Like you know, just being able to say I support the LA team, I support the New York team, like means a lot to people, right? And so I remember when USA took the crown for Overwatch World Cup last year, but they had to beat South Korea to do it.
Oh yeah.
And that was the most intense game, purely because South Korea, you know, is predominantly considered the best team in the league, in the scene. And it was so intense that like we couldn't even get it. Like this was held at BlizzCon, right? It's like I think they cap attendance at 30,000-40,000 people, so they make sure that it's limited. Even then, like the arena they showed the games in had a certain seating capacity. The line to get into the arena was like was overflowing, and they were like, we literally can't let you in because there's too many people in there and no one's leaving. And so we were watching from screens outside of the arena.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And when every time the USA team would like pick one person off from the Korean team and they started advancing, everyone just starts screaming and they're like, USA, USA, USA. And it makes me feel like really like I'm like, yeah, proud to be American, right? But at the same time I'm also like, nationalism, like, this might be a little too much, right? Like but in the moment, of course, it's clearly like a matter of we're cheering for our boys, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that's the whole thing behind it.
Yeah,
but it's funny that you mentioned that, because it's like, I also equally could be like, oh, here are things about America that we want to fix, like legitimately, right? But it's like in that moment you see the stars and stripes and you're just like, oh man, like I put my hand on my heart, and like, you know, you want that to happen.
So. I think, and I just remember because you were there too, like back in 2018 with Evo Japan. So we had the ARMS tournament there, right? Where the ARMS players were like, they were trying their best to like be seen. It was like the smallest tournament there. No one really gave a shit besides the players themselves, so they were like trying their best to like be as loud as possible to just like get hyped, because this was their one big thing that they wanted to show people, right?
And well, the finals were who, like was it Gormagala from USA versus Pega from Japan? Yeah, exactly. So like it was almost as if everyone who was not Japanese was just like, we must rally behind the US flag.
And the funny thing, like I was one of them. We were screaming USA so hard, like I lost my voice because it was so fun. Like you can't think more, like when you start to think more about that, you will just like drop out of kind of that mood. But it's just like, it's just a fun thing that you can experience. And I think this, you know, is going way off into another topic, but like, you know, I never feel unsafe in those moments as well. I don't feel like, you know, a fucking fight this is about to break out just because we're shouting, while I can feel that can happen at sports events, right? But just a side note, but like in this case, it was just fun because we wanted to entice the Japanese players that were sitting like in the other side of the crowd, because they were usually so calm. But after a while, they you know, we activated that primal instinct for them, because they were like, fuck, they're shouting, we need to shout. And then it just like became this, like, they were not hate, it's just like our boy, their boy, like, I don't know. But I think overall in this the kind of things that I guess hooked me for esports, and I think does for a lot of people too, it's just the easy way to kind of get into storylines and such like things like that, because you know, it can be one player. Even in team games, it can just be one person that you need to focus on, like that makes an entire story. Like an entire moment can be a story that usually I would argue might be actually be more difficult to like pull off in sports, you know, like in soccer. Like you have one guy, maybe he touches the ball like 10 times in 90 minutes, like but in like esports you have these constant, like he will be last in the round because of the position he plays like 15 times. He will like maybe 10 of those times he will be 1 versus 4, and maybe like 1% of those times he will do the unthinkable and like destroy everyone. And it's like those kind of things, it's like, I don't know, it's one of those things that kind of drives me, and I wish I had enough time to like get to explain this to someone who is not a non-gamer, because these are the things that I want to say, but at this point the non-gamer is probably zoned out for like 10 minutes and just like, I don't give a shit anymore, I just, where's the ball, like, you know, I'm like, oh, fuck,
yeah, you need to have
watch Rocket League. Yeah,
you need to have a podcast with them to explain everything.
Yeah,
to
now
them, right?
now I can refer to this, but in general, I think one part of this kind of segues pretty well to the topic number 2 of just the kind of having these storylines for players, but also, you know, public people these days can be very much easier and accessible than it is before. And I think for our next topic, where we're going to talk about live stream culture, that's something that we're going to get into more of, just like how does this, because that's almost like the other end of it, like how does that affect the person, or how does this kind of affect our behavior of like, now you can connect with these people. And sometimes it's esports, but sometimes it can just be streamers, and that's not doesn't really have any talent, but you know, suicide by words. But so after the break we're going to get into that, so stay tuned. We'll be back after a couple of minutes, and I'll see how many minutes those are. There we go. And yeah, we'll get right on that, so stay tuned. We'll take a little break and we'll be right back. And we're back after the break now with topic number 2 of the evening. We're going to be talking about live stream culture, and this is a topic that could be astronomically big. So I'm just gonna read out the intro that we had here, prepared by myself here. So with the rise of the accessibility of live streaming in the world, we've entered an interesting era where a culture has emerged with new and sometimes odd behaviors stemming from it. One of the key components in the West has been Twitch's return to its roots with IRL streaming. What are those new behaviors, and what have been our experiences with them? What are some of the positives and negatives of being able to stream this easily? So I'm just gonna unmute Dave here before I go on by myself this entire rest of the cast. Here we go. So basically, I guess this is a topic that spawned from an experience that you had, Dave. So I thought if you want to, maybe you can hit us off with this one.
Yeah, so this idea spawned from, well, like, first of all, since we've been in like kind of this pandemic quarantine mode, you've started streaming, and I've pretty much tried to catch all of your streams, because it just lines up at a good time for me, right?
Can't do hearts, but I was trying to.
Yeah, dude, of course. And so like it got me really interested in streaming again. I mean, obviously, like if anything, streaming has gotten more popular purely because we're all at home. What are we gonna do? You're either gonna be able to watch it, you're gonna be able to produce the content, that type of stuff, right? But since I know you personally, and we're pretty close, like kind of understanding like the behind the scenes of it was like something I was really interested in, because I noticed you're kind of doing the variety streamer thing. But you would also tell me about what would happen kind of behind the scenes, and you would say, "Oh, like, you know, sometimes it's tough because I have to deal with this, I have to deal with that. Like, I'm like really tired, or it's exhausting." And it made me wonder, because I've only streamed very casually in the sense that like, hey, I'm gonna play some games with my friends. I might as well just put it on. Whereas I noticed like as you progress through streaming, you like made your stream better and better. And you're taking elements of like basically what do like professional streamers do, or what do people who make their livelihoods out of this whole medium do, and you started incorporating elements of those into your own stream. Like you had a lot, like I have to really respect you for playing Final Fantasy VII to like 0 people and like talking the entire time. And it's not exact, and it wasn't even 0 people, like because I was like, I lurk in your stream a lot. Like there are a lot of times where you're like, hey, if anyone's out there, like I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Like I actually have your stream up, but I'm not saying anything because I either have like a series of meetings, or like I'm actually trying to do work. Whereas other times you'll notice that like I'm just like in your chat for like an hour straight. You know? So it's one of those things where I'm like, oh wow, like it's just really interesting to see like how you have to adapt.
Yeah,
right.
So I guess thank you, by the way. I really appreciate that. And
oh, my pleasure.
So and this kind of touches on a subject that I've been discussing on, I guess, the Wholesome Transmissions, which is a podcast, not in live stream form, but a really nice podcast nevertheless, made by my good friend Pineapple Freak and Radio. So if you know about that, Wholesome Transmissions, really great. But I was on that show and kind of talking about kind of my mindset going into making projects, right? And I think and I don't want to like bloat my ego or anything here, but I think for me, when I go into a project, especially with streaming, one of my focuses there is so I try to push the visuals and like try to kind of make something that feels like it has good quality. So that in that way, I always kind of put the standards, like the bar, like too high for myself. Like it shouldn't really be attainable, but I try to go for the top as much as possible. And I think it's perhaps a unique thing to have as a streamer, in the sense that I can get annoyed sometimes when I see professional streamers, because there are different kinds of streamers. There are a lot of different kinds of streamers, right? And I think some of the streamers, they you know, we like to say his name, but QXC, right? Like there are streamers
XQC.
Yeah, XQC, sorry. I think QXC is like StarCraft player. Never mind. But so you know, there are streamers that like they're raw personality, like they have their personality, and maybe they got this like one peak from maybe you know, they were professional before or something like that in esports, and then they transition to streamers, so they have that like small base that keeps them alive to like grow to something bigger, but they have no visuals, like their panels under the stream is just like sometimes it's like drawing in paint, you know. Sometimes they have they have the thought of like, maybe it should be good, but then they commission someone that like it looks like and okay, I'm not gonna get too angry, but like it looks like some 15-year-old that just learned Photoshop, right? And in their streams they have like no overlays and stuff like that, and over time some of these streamers, they realize, okay, I need to compete with others, and they really need to up their visuals. And for me, it's almost like the inverse, where I want it to look good, but I don't have that base, right? So I'm trying to like make everything look good, and that puts some. I don't know if other streamers has that same problem, but for me, it stresses me out, where I try to keep this bar of like quality, while also keeping like an output of content. And for me,
you have everything, dude. You have like a schedule. You design all of the graphics and all that. Like the only thing you've commissioned were like your emotes and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I like, and honestly, like that's where I thrive. I think for me, like organizing shit and just like making stuff look as good as possible, that's where I am comfortable. The other part of streaming that I have always struggled with is the grind, like the grind of actually streaming. So like, and that, I think that's what you touched upon when you brought up Final Fantasy, was that one of the things that, you know, I sat here sometimes, you know, by myself, like no one in chat, and like streamed the entirety of Final Fantasy, which was probably like 35 hours. And it is fun, but a lot of the times I was dreading going live because I just wanted to get done with it. Like, because and I feel like, for me, and I think that's a personality thing, like how much can you talk without actually saying something? I think I can talk for hours with just spouting bullshit. Like that's one of the things I've been able to do. But when you start to think about stuff afterwards, that's when it starts to hit you. Like, you know, sometimes I would rewatch some of the VODs of my stream, and it's just like, fuck, I'm just talking for 2 hours here. I'm not saying anything. What the fuck am I doing?
Okay.
And that doesn't motivate me. Like, you know, that, and then that's where I start to question myself. Like, what the fuck does motivate me, right? And I think, I don't know. It's just like some of the behaviors that is kind of promoted on Twitch itself as a platform is the actual gamification of streaming. Like, like it's and that's a part of the fun to me, I think, honestly. I don't know if you like feel the same about that, but you know, you have these achievements in the beginning where it's just like, get like this small amount of people to talk with you. It's like, okay, maybe I can get my friends in here, you know, maybe I can get something started, like do this shit, or like host someone else, or raid someone. Then you get, you know, you have this like Steam achievements kind of thing. And I think the thing that kind of, I wouldn't say like fucks me up, but it kind of makes me think sometimes, is like when I looked at these achievements, now I pretty much maxed out the achievements that I can achieve with my viewer base. So it gives me pause to think of like, what am I doing? You know, like the next achievement is like average, you know, 80 people on a stream, and I like, oh well, okay, that's gonna be like 3 years if I like get a nice break, you know.
I wanted to kind of rant about that. We can get to that in a little bit. But like Kat did ask, like, do you like to talk like by yourself when you play games? Because that's the reason why they don't stream. And I was gonna mention, I think there's an element of narcissism that needs to be involved in streaming. And so I'm not gonna lie, like part of the reason why I wanted to stream was because I've seen other people like that I quote unquote looked up to, or like that I liked watching stream. And I thought, oh, I could do the same thing too, right? Like people might laugh at my jokes too. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. I love watching my own VODs and then laughing at stuff that I laughed at an hour ago.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm guilty as well. You know,
Yeah.
and I don't know, like, what the fuck is that? Is that like some kind of, you know, mental masturbation or some shit? I don't fucking know, but it's just like, I, it's maybe pride. I think it's pride. You know, like you can see yourself and you're like, and that doesn't necessarily, to me, it doesn't have to be a bad thing of like watching yourself saying something that you think is funny. Maybe you laugh, like maybe that's something that you need in that moment. Like I think
Yeah, exactly.
it's all about balance, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's unhealthy. You can have an unhealthy amount of being a fucking, you know, the 400 time you watched a like highlight of yourself. That's a bit much, you know. But like actually being proud of something that you did, which sometimes can be as simple as something unexpected happening on stream. You say something unexpected, and that's just fun. Can be enough, you know. That's a cool thing that you do, right?
Yeah, because I think that if you go too far on the narcissism spectrum, that's actually when you have a lot of difficulty with streaming, because you might focus way too much on like how you do it, how many viewers you have, that type of thing, right? Like if you're too focused on like what kind of attention am I capturing, that's why on the Twitch Reddit, people are like, just don't worry about viewers, bro. Like it's a good generalization. Like, yeah, I actually don't keep a viewer count because I know that 90% of the time it's 0. Like that's one reason why I'll never get affiliate in the near future, is because it's like you have to have this like 3 average viewers within 30 hours. And I'm like, most of the time, like you're talking about XQC and how he like has 0 visuals. Like I'm the same way. I have a camera, I have my game, right?
Yeah.
If anything, I want to like I actually want to jokingly make all of my panels out of like MS Paint. And then I'll start making overlays in MS Paint and like layer them on top of my stream or whatever. But like, yeah, I've always been really into like, hey, my friends and I like to make jokes. Some people think it's funny, that type of thing, right?
I think it's just for clarification too. The thing that kind of annoys me is the insurmountable success some of these people have without with a complete disregard for visuals. That's a different thing. But it's just like, you know, just like, I don't know, if you just take a look at the, you know, the peak kind of introduction of Valorant, right? The closed beta there was, it like, because I know like the money that you get from subs is something like, I don't know, if someone subs for like $5, you get like maybe $2.50. I think it's like half when you're affiliated, right? So when you're partnered, you can get a better deal. And looking at and like looking at what these big streamers, where it's just like fucking, it's like a count, it's like a timer. It's like every 3 seconds they get subs, they get money constantly. It's just like rolling in. And then
I remember when it was a Summit who had 200K people watching him, and you know, even if like 5 to 10% of the people sub to him, boom, that's like a shit ton of money in 1 month just for being up there.
Yeah, and so for me it's just like I feel for my own content as more, and then relating to, you know, the peak, because it is like the 1% of streamers, right? I'm just being realistic. There's like a shit ton of streamers that are not at that level, and it for me it kind of bothers me of like, I'm trying to keep myself at some kind of standard, and then, you know, people, you don't really have to abide by those laws, you know. It's and then I think that's on me. Like that's really on me. I can be honest with that. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about when it comes to, you know, going back to live stream culture stuff, was the actual, you know, besides the effects of, you know, just surrounding streaming itself. Like you can have the streams itself, and there are a lot of struggles behind the scenes there, where it's just like, you know, actually going live for a lot of people can be tough. You know, it can feel tough to even click on start streaming. But the other kind of side that I remember that you mentioned too before we went live was the effects that streaming has to people, and like the culture it creates, and what kind of behaviors that enforces as well. Like, and that doesn't have to necessarily only include the streamer itself, but, you know, viewers or people that are interactive, or friends of streamers as well. And I remember that you mentioned that you had this like interaction where you met someone that had an IRL stream, and you were a part of that stream, but you were not the streamer, right?
Yeah.
And like, what I guess what I want to ask and find out there is like, what changed, like, from what was the difference of, like, you know, having, I think it was, you said you had lunch with that person, like having lunch
Yeah.
without a stream and then with a stream. What do you feel like was the kind of main differential there? And was that like, how does that come to be from Twitch, you know?
Okay, yeah, like let me give you some really quick context, which is we talked about Justin TV, which was the predecessor of Twitch. And that was literally a guy who said, I'm gonna live stream my life. So he was a guy in college. He had a computer that just like streamed his webcam 24/7. And then he started like taking it around with him. Like he had a backpack or portable setup that he would like live stream. It was probably in like 144 or 360p, you know, back in the day. And Justin.tv like became this thing because people would just go on there, play music. They would also stream like pirated stuff, but like video games, right? And then they realized the video game aspect of it could make money. And so they spun it off to Twitch, and then Twitch became the games only like platform. And then they realized there's money in games, but there's not a lot of money in the other stuff. So they closed down Justin TV. I think the original owner like left the company, and then Twitch.tv became big, got bought by Amazon, and then we said it went full circle because Twitch finally, like at some point in time, they introduced in real life streaming, just chatting, those categories that allow you to do this again. And now we have esports and music, and that's like really nice, right? Yeah. So that's like the context behind like the build up into what we have today. And so yeah, when I was still living in Tokyo, this is like 2018. I'm acquainted with her. I'm just gonna mention her because I mean, might as well, right? Star Bitsy-chan. I guess she's like a predominantly in real life streamer in Tokyo. She does play League of Legends quite a bit and some other games like Animal Crossing and, you know, stuff that's popular or whatever she wants to do. But yeah, like I remember I was just like, hey, like I haven't seen you in a while. Why don't we like hang out and go get lunch together? I know this cool restaurant, right? And so we go there, but like she, you know, she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be streaming, by the way. I'm like, okay, yeah, like that's what she does. And she, you know, she shows up pretty much like not like super decked out, but like I was really impressed with how there's this entire like setup she has, right? She's got a backpack, she's got this portable camera and like her cell phone. Now it's even more like advanced, quote unquote, where it's like the phone is like strapped to her arm so she never loses it. She can ride her bike while streaming, which I think is dangerous, but like, you know, you do you, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's just weird because I get this feeling of like it's both really cool because you get to see someone's life, you get to follow them on their life journey, but it's also like kind of obnoxious because especially in Japan, like calling attention to yourself is just such a no-no, right? It's like, okay, you're a blonde Caucasian woman, so you already stand out. And you've got like a camera pointed at yourself, right? And you've got like a phone that like like whenever people sub, like the TTS goes off or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh my gosh, like you're in the train and it's like talking and I'm like, oh, what is going on? You know, like I wasn't on the train with her.
Like
no, but
okay.
No, but like if you watch her stream every now and then, she'll be on the train like traveling or whatever. I think she turns the volume down because, you know, like she's lived in Japan for a while, so she kind of knows some of the rules, like the rules she can bend and the rules that she's not supposed to violate or whatever, right? But when we met up at the restaurant itself, and yeah, like so what changed was like, so typically I mean, part of it is kind of selfish. I did want to ask her about some more personal things, but I was like, this is inappropriate for a stream.
Yeah.
So she set down the camera in front of us. We sat side by side, and then we just had our meals there. But we caught up on basically everything. I was like, oh yeah, my past 2 years here have been like this. Like, what have you been up to? You know, did you change jobs? Like, are you seeing anyone? That type of stuff, right? And we're like, oh yeah, you know, just whatever. And then we went to go like sing karaoke, and that was like. It's really interesting because I realize now the entire time there were people just watching us sing in a karaoke room.
Yeah.
And like it's like they could judge the shit out of you. But I guess the good thing is like I didn't that's what I started realizing. I didn't think too much about it. Like I I used to be a lot more self-conscious. I mean, I still am, but like in a way, because streaming is the way it is now, I feel like I can kind of let go of that. Like so many people can do it now, and so many people are allowing themselves to be exposed and to be judged by others, that it's like, hey, it's all right, right? To a certain degree, obviously.
But so what I'm curious about is that, like, so, you know, you were talking about these kind of quote unquote like personal stuff with her, and you have this chat like rolling, and like, does that affect the conversation as well? Like, did you feel that it was just like,
Oh, it has to.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like, cause they, you know, and God forbid, like, you know, like a high IQ Twitch chat, is there even such a thing? Like, you know, you can say something that maybe you pronounce that word wrong or something, and then that's the thing that is just gonna be like fucking
Oh, for
blasted
sure.
in this, like, while in normal conversation that is not even recorded, like people just like
Yeah.
skip that and then you start, you know, continue this discussion. So like,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, did you feel that from your perspective, as not as the streamer, that she was being affected of like what was expected of her as a streamer, or like by the chat itself? Yeah, exactly. The word that was written in chat here, I'm not gonna say it, but
It's funny because it's a word that like you're not used to, and you're like, what is this, right?
yeah.
But yeah, so this is interesting because this reminds me of the debate about self-censorship, right? So in the moment, I think preparing for it, yeah, I might have thought something along the lines of, oh, I better make sure that I have certain here's the good thing. Since she and I both understand the culture of streaming, where like there are certain taboos, right? Like, you know, you don't mention where you live, like the
Yeah,
address or whatever. Obviously
no
not.
doxing, right?
Yeah, no doxing, no, you know, no real names are revealed if we don't want them to be revealed, that type of stuff, right? And no, I said personal things, but like, yeah, details about personal life, like we stayed away from those.
Okay.
But other than that, it was still very much like, you know, a typical friend conversation. Like
Okay.
once we warmed up to it, because I have to admit, the beginning was a little bit awkward because it was just like, oh, let's test the waters. How far can we go? And this is going to be dependent on each streamer, right? I think for her, she's super used to in real life streaming. Like I watched her stream the other night, and she was at an izakaya with her friends.
Yeah.
You know, and it was even like kind of funny because she put the camera somewhere, and they had two tables, but like in the table closer to the camera, like a guy was chatting up a girl, and chat's just like, get her number, you know. Like it's just so like, oh, it's so voyeuristic, you know. And this is what I realize is part of the appeal of streaming, is that you are watching other people like do things that maybe you fantasize about, or that like you wish you could live through them vicariously.
But
right?
it almost makes it like a game, right? Like you
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's the thing that kind of made me, now I can understand it. Being back in Sweden, now I can definitely understand it. But like when because I think IRL really started to be on the come up, like when both you and I lived in Japan, and you know, there were moments when I, you know, you go onto Twitch and the IRL section, there's like 20 streams of people just walking in alleys in Japan.
Yeah.
And I got so angry. Like one of the guys, he was like 10 minutes away from my apartment. I was like, I'm just gonna fucking smack the camera out of him. Like, what? How is this content?
I'm gonna end your stream.
Yeah, but it's just like I got frustrated because I couldn't understand why that was interesting as content. But then at the same time, it's like, you know, a lot of people, especially with Japan, right? They want to go there, but maybe for one reason or another, they can't afford, they can't travel. Yeah. Like there's a lot of things that are hindering them, and it's just easy. Like, but I think the kind of I don't want to say like dangers, but the kind of thing that I'm concerned about is like how there is this real kind of interaction with a person that is moving in public spaces, and how they can affect people's behavior. You said it yourself, like with having sounds and stuff like that in public places, and you know, you can have some funny moments where it's just like the fucking what is it, Jake and Bake, or like getting the, what is it, someone getting like playing the, what is the loudest orgasm ever in like like those kind of things. It can become funny, but it can also potentially lead to like someone like fighting the streamer or something, or you know, people getting quote unquote stream sniped, where it's just like people try to find the streamer as a game. They try to find where they are in real life. And like I've seen especially when people travel to Japan, like they're not IRL streamers by, you know, their category of stream, but they go to Japan and then people are like, oh shit, this guy is in Japan, or this girl is in Japan, I'm gonna find them, or you know, vice versa if they travel to another place. And I think it was I believe it was Forsen who, like, he was walking around in like 3 a.m. in Japan, like there was no people there, and then he see this guy, like, you know, in the camera behind him, like, you know, down the street, but he keeps seeing him, and the chat is like, you know, dude, there's like a guy that has been following you around, we keep recognizing him. And then he was like, okay, maybe I should just run, and then the guy starts running as well, and it becomes this like he really fucked up scene
horror
where it's
stream.
Like, yeah, it's just like, and then eventually the guy just like catches up to him, and he's just like, yeah, it's just a joke, dude, and then he like goes away. And the guy is just like, you could tell that the streamer was just, I think it was Forsen, like he was shook about that, like he was legit like, I thought he was gonna like, you know, stab me or something. And it's just like I don't know.
That's a legitimate concern, because streaming is like we tend to think of it as like, this is the fantasy world that we enter to be with, like, you know, other people who are part of this fantasy world, right? But once it starts, this is the thing, once it starts like meshing with your real life, that's when things get super weird.
Yeah,
right.
And I feel that has been one of the main things that like have kept me away from doing IRL streams as well. Like last time when I was in Japan, I think now in, you know, at the end of January, I was like, oh fuck, let's just try IRL streaming. But then when I was there, I was like, it's the, you know, the disconnect of like having your camera out in the public, and the thought that I'm putting myself, like, I'm not necessarily, but you could potentially put a target on your back by putting yourself out there. And I like the only time. So you mentioned you were on a IRL stream, right? I was on one too with Jellysour, who a friend of mine who also streams on Twitch, and she wanted to try IRL stream, right? So me and my other friend, who is also her boyfriend, we all like, we went with her because she wanted to feel safe, and like, you know, you never know like how and I mean, I think at one point I too felt like I don't really know what was going to happen here, but the fun part was that the entire experience that you usually have of socializing almost felt like that part also became a gamification, because it was like and like, you know, you feel like you want to create content, right? Okay, we need to do something. Okay, well, let's go to this shop, or like, let's show something. So we went to some ice cream shop that is like pretty popular, and like tried to show that, and like, oh, what's our reaction to that? And it was fun, but it was also a bit exhausting. But I think, you know, that was only like the initial like introduction to this kind of behavior. But I feel like it's such a kind of like an area that has, it's just, we're beginning to explore this, that wasn't really a thing back in the Justin TV era. That is just like, now there is the real power of having like, people have like freaking 40,000 people watching someone walk down an alley, and you know, one of those can be a psychos, one of this can be an amazing thing. Like it, you know, the moments that you see on Jake and Bake is like, is sometimes insane. Like, you know, he can walk up to a street and then a guy comes in with a car and like hop into my car, like a random person.
Oh,
and then
my
he's
gosh.
like, and then several times he's jumped into the car. Like, you know, it could be whoever.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, so I just thought of 3 things now from you saying this, right? One of them is, I did another in real life stream with a friend who doesn't do it normally. If anything, he likes to keep things really private, but he streams like him playing mobile games and like fighting games and stuff like that. But we met up in Japan. I forget if I was still living there or if we were both on vacation there, but it was just one of those like rando, like, let's walk through Akihabara and have dinner together types of moments, right? He muted the stream for most of it because we were just talking, but he wanted to have like the background of Tokyo out there.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting to me because there's specific audiences for this stuff. There's people who want drama. There's people who want to see the streets of Japan. There's people who want to see nerd culture. So it's almost as if there's something for everyone, right? Number two is that like stream sniping was already a thing back in like StarCraft 2 and other games where you tried to find the streamer and then like piss them off by beating them at a game, harassing them in game, that type of stuff. Now it's bleeding into real life, right? Like there aren't very many streamers, I feel like, that people are willing to do that to, but the ones that are super popular and have a certain personality, they attract a crowd like that.
Yeah.
And it's really, I don't know, it's just strange to me, right? It's strange, but also very understandable once you kind of like look into more like human behavior and psychology behind that.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you were talking about Jelly and how you and her boyfriend all got together for like the safety aspect of it, that makes so much sense because especially for women, like that's just something they have to worry about, right? And I noticed with I mean, I've seen some like those live stream fails where it's like it's a small Asian woman in like a foreign area and someone comes up to them and like hits them, or someone says like a racial slur to them or something like that, right? And it's like it's like, oh my gosh, it's so shocking. But what might actually be more shocking is the fact that this exists.
Yeah.
And like it enlightens people to a life that someone else has the experience that you never would have to, right? And I find that actually somewhat comforting in the sense that it's valuable. It's in a way it's a teachable moment. Like the people watching at that time, I think most of them were like, wait a minute, what the heck, right? There's always going to be people who are like, oh, ha, ha, like funny joke or whatever, right? Like Twitch chat, like, yeah, you cut earlier we stereotyped him as like, oh, Twitch chat's just like this hive mind who just makes memes all the time, right? But they're made of real people and they can see how people feel, like especially when someone is scared or afraid or frustrated, or you can see their emotions on stream because they're exposing themselves. I think a lot of people can realize what that does to someone, and they can empathize with stuff like that.
I think you're right, and I think the scary part about this is that I mean, we talked about the legitimacy of esports, or like how people perceive that earlier, but in this case, it's like I want to think about the legitimacy in terms of like regulation, and like how this is like it doesn't even exist. Like there's basically no rules, it feels like, and the rules that are put up are by Twitch, and it's like a private company that has like rules that protect them, but not maybe now they they have the safety council thing kind of came out like a few weeks ago, and I think maybe that's something that is.
Oh, what is that really briefly? Because I know in terms of TOS, it's literally like no racial slurs. And I mean, sadly, it seems like if you're a hot girl that they like, you can do more than other people.
So I'm not 100% sure, like, because I only read the like a fast an article about the safety council, but pretty much it's just one of these initiatives within the company to kind of promote, like, okay, how can we actually make the platform safer? And they brought on people from outside the company to kind of create or form this like task force group to see of how they can work with this. And it's been controversial because they brought in a lot of different kind of people, and people are have different relations to these people in the safety council. But it's one of those things that is just like, even if they bring them together now, how long will it take to actually implement some change that will actually affect people in a positive manner? And like this is on a company level, but it is not, IRL streaming is global. Anyone can do it, and any country has different laws or rules of how to do things.
Right.
So that's why, like, where I'm kind of like, yeah, I think concern is the best word to put it, because it's like it's an exciting era, because it's like the Wild West in terms of what can actually happen. amazing things can happen, like super funny things can happen, like that are wholesome, like people just helping someone out. You can really, like, for the person itself, they can come to new places. Like one of these, again, like Jake and Bake moments was that he, like, a lowrider came in and it looked like a gangster, it was like, oh shit, he's gonna get fucked up. He goes into the car, it's the nicest dude ever, and he's just like, hey dude, where do you want to go? Like, I can drive you anywhere. Like, look at this car, it bumps. Like, it was just like super funny, but
I was gonna say, part of the interesting thing about live streaming your life like that is that so it's ironic, right? It's like, what about the safety aspect of a guy getting into a stranger's car, right? But like with Jake and Bake, it's like, does he get viewers of 40,000 or whatever? Like he's pretty high up there, right?
Yeah, I think probably like 15 or something, I would say. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah. But like when people are watching that, I mean, this is something I've thought about. It's like, if you're ever gonna do anything where you might be in danger, live stream it. And it sounds really fucked up, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, you will actually have a record of it
Yeah.
if something happens to you. And
yeah,
it's kind of crazy, because I've heard of this happening already, where people kind of go to demonstrations or protests or whatever, and they live stream themselves. And then, something will happen, such as like riot police come.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea behind it is, if something ever happens to me, you guys will know. So you can tell the world, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of those really, really strange, like, advantages/disadvantages of live streaming.
Yeah.
Because it can go either way.
Yeah, I think it just kind of puts it on, what is it, like, on its edge. Like, you can like, either of the things can happen that maybe, since we're not used to it, wouldn't happen before. But yeah, I think if I try to see this in a positive light, and like what can actually become good of it, like one of the things that I've been thinking about, personally for my streams when it comes to this, like this entire aspect of like gamification and stuff. You said that, of course, you have to do it in a safe manner, but like biking while streaming and doing it, of course, with good equipment and like making sure that everything is okay. I feel like, while there is no like laws or regulations or anything really right now, there is some really interesting ways to kind of activate your life as a streamer itself. Like, from a streamer perspective, you can find really interesting ways to like interact with people and actually make some activity of your life, especially now in a pandemic where everyone's stuck, right? It's like, one of the ideas I had was just like, fucking have this bike stream, right? And then you show people where you go, and it's more one of those live streams where it could be just music in the background and just someone going down a street, like you have on YouTube, right? There's like this lo-fi streams, right? And but then you can have like voting of like, okay, which direction should we go? Should we go up the mountain, or should we have like this?
We were like, actually, Defur, you might want to be careful about that, right? It's like, I'm gonna read chat while biking, and then it's like, take the left or the right, go to the haunted forest. Okay.
Oh no, like you would definitely have to stop and like actually look through, but just like, and then just kind of like, and for me it's like, I want to exercise and I want it to be fun. Now there is like actually a way that you can somehow mold this into a positive thing.
Absolutely.
And that's one tiny aspect of it. I'm very like cautiously, I guess, concerned about this entire thing, because I feel like what will probably happen at some point is that some really terrible thing will happen when it comes to live streaming, especially on Twitch, and then things will change.
Oh, absolutely. I have a friend who, his name is Joe Balek. He live streams every now and then. Like, it's mostly games, but he'll live stream himself driving, like, to work. Like, I don't know if he does the entire journey, which I think he doesn't, but like, people want to see that. There are literally people who will jump on and be like, whoa, a guy driving on the highways of Japan? Because he's not even in Tokyo, right? And it's legitimately cool, because it's like, who else is going to put out something like this, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely see, like, there's a lot of potential value there, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of opportunity to find some unique content for this that can actually hopefully benefit people too, and not just be a freaking downer in this like godforsaken era that we're in now. But
yeah, I did realize what I wanted to say, which was yeah, you're right though. Like, Twitch isn't like, we've talked about esports being in a Wild West stage. Like, live streaming is even more Wild West, right? in the sense that like we are going to make this up as we go along. Like try to imagine like I don't know, like in Sweden you have the parliament, right?
Yeah.
In the US we have Congress. Like I'm trying to imagine like Congress people and like senators trying to like understand live streaming and make laws about it. It's like I just don't see it happening anytime soon, right?
No.
And yeah, you're right. Like I think driving streams, biking streams, all that, running streams, they're all going to be okay until someone like legitimately fucking dies in one of them.
Yeah.
Right? Then there's going to be an outrage and people are going to call for something. They're going to be like, we need this, we need that. Like we need to be protected. And then it's going to be like, we're going to make a compromise of some sort. And then maybe it'll be like, you can no longer stream driving if it involves these things. And it may or may not make sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's just going to be really interesting to see where we go with that.
I think a really good example of this was, I don't know if you remember this, but in the beginning of Pokemon Go, you know, speaking of changing people's behaviors, one thing that actually happened when Pokemon Go was released was that people went crazy of like trying to find the Pokemon stops, right? People were trespassing a lot of places, and I think someone actually, if I'm not mistaken, someone died by like
someone got shot in America.
I don't think it was in America actually, but like someone died, you know, by trespassing, and then like in some countries it was banned because people were just like non-stop trespassing in like the private space.
Wait, Pokemon Go is banned, or
yeah, like fuck, like I really should like have Google up for this moment, but
I know in the US, because it came out when we were both in Japan, right? So it was kind of like we had some inkling of what was going on at home, because like I would ask my friends what's going on, and it launched in Japan later than in the US, which I find ridiculous. But I remember early on, I think driving while playing Pokemon Go was straight up made illegal, and the app itself would say if you're going a certain speed, you know, your stuff doesn't count anymore, because they just wanted to discourage people from hopping in their cars and just firing up this app and then not paying attention and crashing, you know, their car or running over a kid or something, right? Because if anything, like the game kind of made you want to go to places where people congregated. So if you were, you know, if you're doing dumb stuff and not paying attention, like you could potentially hurt people. This is a really good example. I totally forgot about this. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, so just a quick Google here. So from USA Today, I hope that is a reliable source, but they wrote like 4 years ago about Iran banning Pokemon Go because of security concerns. And then, you know, there are other articles where it's like different parts of the world in like you know, but that's more about locations specifically, like in Israel or like in Saudi Arabia, like specific locations have been banned, and like in the United States it was like they were trying to fend off people from the Holocaust Museum, you know, like you know, like
yeah, I remember hearing about that. Oh my gosh.
And that thing was just at such critical level where live streaming really isn't right now. You know, it is a growing thing that is like returned from Twitch or to Twitch, but it's not this like, you know, like boom, everyone is doing it in the entire world. You know, we have to stop it now, and that's where I'm concerned, because that's when problems can arise from nowhere. That, you know, people are complacent, and especially people in countries and in the company itself, people get complacent, and then some shit is gonna happen. I personally don't. I'm dreading that time it will happen. I hope it doesn't happen, and I hope that the complacent, you know, behavior to kind of how to, I guess, I don't want to say control, but like make it more safe will actually come into place before something really terrible happens. But I think we have kind of run a long time for this topic for today. But I wanted to, yeah, exactly. I wanted to give you the last one here.
Okay, because like first of all, yeah, it reminds me of the response to the pandemic, right? Like there's proactive and there's reactive. I feel like with most tech companies, everything is really reactive. So Twitch is doing their best, right? And I think the Safety Council is a good start in trying to understand like what's up ahead, right? Trying to predict the future and making the path forward like better for streamers, Twitch, the audience, etc. Right. The second thing is I alluded to it earlier, but gamification of like of streaming, like as a streamer, as an audience member, etc. Like what I wanted to like just quickly ask you about is like what is the path for a streamer like career wise? I don't know if you've ever thought about expanding it past a certain point. I don't know if it's just if you would just want to keep it a hobby, but that's something that's always interested me because yes, there's that narcissistic part of me that goes, what if I could become big, right? I realize that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of luck. It takes so much more than maybe anyone can control. Also on a side note, I do have 40,000 homie points now, so I'm going to have to like troll you with one of the bonuses that's available on your stream. But that the whole gamification thing is like really interesting to me because it encourages certain behaviors amongst the audience members and the streamers and all that. And I kind of just want to understand from your point of view, where do you want to take streaming?
So so for context for anyone who's listening here, I have points on my stream just to bring that out that are called homie points. Now you can use those to make me do stuff, and unfortunately one of them is either me reading ARMS fanfics or me having a cosplay for a future stream. But that side note aside, I think that for streaming, like as of now, the transition could be something, you know, in quote unquote old media, you know, become a TV host, you know. I definitely think that that's something that is possible, or what people have done, you know. Maybe we're not a good example here, but people transitioning into like podcasting or like somehow like into the legitimate world. There are different ways. You know, people from esports, they what is his name? Apollo, for example. He was a caster. Yeah. You know, he was a player, then streamer, then caster, and now he's like a project manager at ESL. Like I think there's a lot of ways where you can kind of, because a lot of companies wants to get into esports but also live streaming, so I think there's opportunities to find maybe some talents that you have that aren't necessarily live streaming, but when it comes to like organizing stuff. But the other part I want to mention too is that these are all things that you consider when the world looks like as it does now. I do believe that as of how things are looking now, in the future, I think that live streaming can become like, you know, the bigger thing, you know, movies and stuff like that. You know, why should that be the majority thing? And I think the jobs that are created from live streaming is just going to increase by itself. So the thought of having something to transition to might actually not have to be a thing. Like you know, people considered that with esports before, that, you know, what do you do after you're a player? Were you going to be a coach? There's no coach jobs. There's so many coach jobs like popping up now because there's so many young kids that companies want to sponsor, but they have no idea what the fuck esports is and like how to make them consistently good. There's a lot of startups right now that are looking into like, how do we organize live streamers? How do we work with them? Because right now in the Wild West, they're just, as you've pointed out, different levels of narcissism that can sometimes be incredibly difficult to work with. I might be speaking from some experience here, working in esports, but it's one of those things that I don't think we've reached the final, you know, stage of what this industry looks like. So the transition might actually not even be there right now. But when that happens, when, you know, fucking like let's take Jake and Bake, you know, when he's I don't know, 15 years later he got a knee injury, he can't walk around Taiwan anymore, and he can't do funny shit in Japan. What does he do? Well, there's probably going to be an alternative for him there within the streaming industry. But I don't know what that is right now. For me personally, I want to be a caster, an esports caster, doing live commentary, and talking is a part of that. Now, how much quality there is of me talking by myself streaming Final Fantasy VII for 35 hours, that's a different topic. Maybe it doesn't always have to be quality, right? Maybe I just enjoy games too, but I think there's an underlying kind of, for me, like an underlying goal of like, being on camera, being confident in that, and being comfortable with that is something live streaming is a good platform for.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I don't know if I was so involved in looking at other stuff when you were kind of explaining it, so I don't know if I covered the different
that totally makes sense, because not to toot my own horn, but like I've done a podcast that was live, just like this, right? So yours is like much better produced, but I've done one for, oh man, how long was it? Like on and off for approximately 2 years back in the day. We started on Justin TV, we moved over to Twitch, and then I had kind of like semi-retired from it, and then within a year or so I moved to Japan. So it was just kind of crazy. But like what was interesting was trying to make connections between what I did for that live stream and how it applied to other things I did in my life. Yeah. So one example of that was I was chosen as one of the moderators of a panel at Anime Expo, because I used to staff that convention. And yeah, one of my manager really trusted me, and he said, go to the this panel, which is arguably one of the more popular guests that we had. It really depends on who you ask. But I remember getting up there. I'm dressed up in a suit and I have a microphone, and I'm supposed to introduce like this guest of honor, their translator, and talk about like, oh, like, you know, this is where you're gonna go when you take care of autographs. This is the line you have to line up in. This is what you have to prepare. Blah blah blah. And then like end the panel and stuff like that, right? And it actually came pretty natural to me. And like when I stopped to think about it, and I talked to some friends about it, I was like, wow, yeah, like it was really cool. But I was surprised at how, I guess, confident I felt, because I never would have thought of that when I was younger. And my friend said to me, it's probably because you do a live podcast every Thursday night, like in front of, you know, 2 people. So you have to like, you know, manage your expectations and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that's a good point.
Yeah, but that's really true. I and that's really cool to hear too. I actually didn't not know that, but I agree. That's definitely one of those unexpected traits that you kind of work, I guess, improve on yourself. And I think as we move towards a more live stream society, we live in a society, we're going to have more opportunities that involve actually having, you know, people don't give a shit about the AI is creating everything behind the scenes, right? So we need people to actually present them, because we want that human interaction for now. So we need some people there, and I do think that live streaming or podcasting, or both, you know, in a combination, is definitely a way to get to those opportunities that otherwise, you know, how else are you going to do that as easily and as accessible as just putting start stream on Twitch, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, if there's nothing else you would like to add, Dave, I think we're going to head to the outro.
All right,
cool. So yeah, just want to kind of, I guess, thank everyone who has been a part of this episode too. I feel like we're getting to the point where we kind of starting to feel like this is a structure. There's a structure to this.
This is a real show.
This is a real show. This is starting to feel like a real show. We cut the third subject, and now we're going to, with these 2 subjects, esports and nerd culture. Yeah, I was just wondering, Dave, if you had any final kind of comments or summary of these 2 subjects that we've talked about. Now it's always feels like when we talk about live stream or like esports, it somehow connects. There's somehow always a loop at the end, because they feel really close to each other, but it's just like maybe that's our own bias just constantly connecting these 2 together. But I feel like, you know, these experiences that we've had, it's been nice to go through them at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel like esports and live streaming sit in this interesting niche of like developing industries and cultures, right? Like, if anything, I feel like we are experiencing kind of like, it sounds so cliche, but we're experiencing the future right in front of us, right? It's like, you know,
kind of thing.
Yeah, the future is now. You know, like, oh my gosh, like sports is virtual. Oh my gosh, like entertainment is now like offloaded or distributed to the average man. Like, this is incredible, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I think I love to have more of these talk with you. I think we can go, as we always say, we can go on for hours about these kind of topics.
Oh yeah.
But I also want to kind of direct a thanks to everyone who's tuned in today. It's been really nice to have people here in chat listening in. We can't always reply to everything that we see because we're right in the middle of a thought there. But we still appreciate you being here. I once again want to thank my good friend Gittimen, who is doing all of the music and the tunes for this talk show. We're only doing his songs that or the beats that he's put together for this show. So I am really thankful for that. You can also, you know, follow me, Defur, on Twitter, where I shitpost daily, almost daily. I think people at my esports company, they say, wow, I think 30% of my feed is you, Dennis. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's your tough luck, you know, unfollow me if you want to. But if you want some shitposting, you feel free to follow me there, or on the stream here on Twitch.tv. And Dave, maybe you can talk about your YouTube channel.
Yeah, you can find me on twitter.com/TDave, T3hDave. You can also find me on YouTube. I'm actually one of the OGs that has a youtube.com/TDave. Yeah, it's not like anything super special. I do a thing called the Daily Dave, and it's literally a video diary of myself that I started when quarantine started. It was like originally meant to be a project to just kind of document how the pandemic progressed. Obviously, I got pretty bored of the pandemic itself, and I started just talking about random stuff. I mean, I've done that before anyway. So yeah, it's literally just a video diary. Check it out if you want.
Yeah, and with that, we're gonna say thank you. Next Sunday, when we go to episode 3, we're going to talk about what makes good esport casting. And if we don't change it, I'm really interested about this one, but Reddit, does it truly deserve to be called the front page of the internet? We're gonna have some spicy talk about that.
Oh boy.
So if you want to tune into that, you can next Sunday at 7 p.m. CEST, which is other times in other time zones. I'm not gonna try to calculate that, but you know,
10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time.
Thank you, Dave. So tune into that if you want to, but we'll see you guys next time. Thank you and goodbye.